Oliver Jonas sighed as he stepped onto the deserted platform of the Thornbridge subway station, shoulders weighed down by another exhausting day at a job he loathed. He was an accountant, but his real aspiration was to play saxophone with the local jazz ensembles that performed downtown. Yet that dream felt further away every time he mounted these station steps. The fluorescent lights overhead flickered, humming with an uneasy electrical buzz. It was late, almost midnight, and the place was nearly empty. The usual crowd of drunks and night shift workers had already come and gone, whisked away by the final scheduled trains. All that remained was Oliver, a slip of a newspaper stand, and old gum spots on the floor. He tapped his foot, counting down the minutes until the last train arrived. Every morning and evening he found himself on this platform, bored, feeling trapped, but something in the air that night felt off, like a silent storm gathering in the tunnels below. His phone battery was low, so he had nothing to distract him from the gnawing sense of unease. He glanced at the station clock. It was late. The last train was overdue. The thunderous echo of metal against track rumbled in the distance. For a moment, his chest relaxed in relief, thinking he hadn't been stranded after all. But as the train's headlights emerged from the darkness, it came in slower than usual, halting with a shriek of brakes. Oliver expected to see the normal commuter cars with fluorescent lights. Instead, the windows were tinted, nearly black, like they concealed something inside. The train stretched longer than he ever remembered, an almost endless chain of cars that rattled with weary moans. He hesitated. There was only one reason to get on. The alternative was walking home through dark streets, which he knew was no safer in this part of town. Steeling himself, he crossed the threshold into the front car. Inside, the train was unsettlingly quiet. The overhead lights sputtered with a dim glow, while a faint haze hung in the air. Each seat looked brand new, unstained cloth, polished metal rails, yet everything else felt old, as though time had pressed a layer of dread into the walls. Oliver found an empty spot and sank into it, exhaustion battling the creeping sense that something was very wrong. The doors slid shut behind him with a hiss, the train pulling forward. The standard route signage wasn't illuminated, and the typical station announcements were replaced by feedback-laden static on the loudspeakers. Oliver stared around at the other passengers, noting that there were only a handful. One woman in a tattered coat sat with her eyes closed, mumbling as if in prayer. A man in coveralls clutched a lunch pail, beads of sweat trickling down his forehead. In the far corner, a pair of teenagers dozed against each other, wearing identical earbuds. No one made eye contact with anyone else. When the train arrived at the next station, Newmore Street, Oliver noticed no one got on or off. He peered through the tinted windows and realized that even the station lights outside were off, making it impossible to see much more than vague outlines of the platform. From the corner of his eye, he thought he saw something dart past, perhaps a figure or a shadow. He felt a chill, a primal urge to leave the train immediately, but the doors had already closed. With another metallic groan, the train pressed on. He wanted to check the transit map. Normally, the route from Thornbridge to Oakmont would go through 5 stations, requiring no more than 15 minutes. But every time he glanced at the overhead digital display, it was blank, glitching out. Despite all of this, the train continued forward, station after station, each an unlit phantom. Time lost all meaning. The train car rattled and groaned, as if hungry or in pain. Oliver waited for some official announcement. None came. Instead, a voice echoed inside his mind, a subtle whisper that seemed to emanate from the train itself. "I am hungry." Oliver startled and looked around, wondering if someone had spoken. The other passengers were silent or asleep. Had he imagined it? Maybe. Pushing the eerie notion aside, he stood to move to another car, hoping to find an intercom or a conductor. The connecting door slid open with a hiss, revealing a narrow passage lit by a single flickering bulb. He felt each step reverberate through the metal floor, like walking on the belly of a beast. He passed through the next few cars, each one nearly identical and equally disquieting. A few lonely souls sat hunched in their seats, faces drawn, eyes distant. None of them acknowledged Oliver. In the fifth car, he found an outdated system map pinned to the wall, corners curled with age. There was Thornbridge Station, marked in red, but the rest of the route was different lines, extended far beyond the boundaries of the normal city map, twisting and looping until they vanished off the paper. Scrawled across the bottom in barely legible handwriting were the words, "The engine demands its due." Oliver felt his stomach churn, as though confronted by some hidden menace. A wave of dizziness engulfed him. He recalled a local urban legend. A haunted train that roamed late-night tunnels, rumored to accept only broken souls, feeding on their misery. People joked about it in hushed tones at the downtown bars, calling it the Devil's Line. But no one truly believed in its existence. He tried to shake off the memory, reasoning that the story was just city folklore, yet the suspicion kept pulsing in his mind. All he knew was that he needed to find the operator, or some official who could explain what was going on. He started opening the door to the sixth car. Something tugged at his sleeve. He glanced down to see a thin woman clutching his coat. She had frazzled hair, dark circles under her eyes. Lips chapped and trembling, she whispered, "Don't go in there. Stay here. If you go further, it'll only get hungrier." "What do you mean?" asked Oliver, easing her grip from his sleeve. "Where's the conductor? Is anyone in charge?" She glanced around as if afraid of being overheard. Her voice cracked as she spoke. "Nobody drives it. It drives itself, feeds off us. It's always fed off the lost and the desperate, the ones who have no hope left. That's how it keeps running." Oliver felt a coldness envelop him. That doesn't make any sense. There must be a station manager, or an emergency phone, or something. She shook her head. "We're the only ones who can't leave. The rest, they're chosen, or they haven't been chosen yet. You can't just walk off." He gently removed her hand and said, "I have to do something." With determination fueling each step, Oliver took a deep breath and slipped into the next car. The moment he crossed the threshold, he heard the faint whistle of the train, like a sinister exhalation. The lights overhead momentarily brightened, then flickered. The new car was devoid of passengers. The seats were entirely empty, except for a single occupant, a pale skeletal figure dressed in a dusty conductor's uniform. His head was tilted forward as though asleep. Heart-hammering, Oliver approached, noticing how the figure's skin clung to his skull, each cheek hollow. Maybe he was just an old man, exhausted. Oliver cleared his throat and ventured, "Sir, are you the conductor? Are you okay?" The man lifted his head slowly. His eyes were so sunken they seemed like black pits. He opened his mouth, but instead of words, a rasp grated out, like metal grinding metal. Oliver recoiled as that grisly sound echoed through the carriage. The man made an effort again, and this time his voice sounded like a distant echo in the hollow train car. "Too long? Too long? An offering must be made." "What are you talking about?" Oliver asked, backing away. He glanced around, but there was no escape except back through the door he'd come from. The man rose to his feet with a disturbing fluidity. His uniform bore an insignia that Oliver didn't recognize. He took a step forward, pressing a withered hand against Oliver's chest. In the artificial light, his nails appeared yellowed and cracked. When he spoke again, it was clearer but still disjointed, as if something else was speaking through him. "You have come aboard. The train runs on darkness, on souls. The engine is never full. Each traveler must pay the fare." "I have a subway pass?" Oliver said lamely, fumbling for his wallet. Fear and confusion blurred his thoughts. The man gave a guttural laugh. "Coins, tickets, those are worthless here. This train requires something else. Your life's regrets, your burdens, your sins, a piece of your soul, an offering." Oliver's mind swirled. He tried to formulate a rational argument. This is a nightmare, a delusion, yet the musty odor of the seats, the metallic tang of the air, the flickering lights, everything was too real to dismiss. "How do I get off?" he asked in a trembling voice. The conductor eyed him grimly. "A sacrifice must be made. Someone on this train is chosen, but the train chooses randomly, one soul to fuel the engine. Then others may depart." Shaking lines creased his face, as though in sorrow. "Sometimes it lets the chosen go if someone else volunteers, or if the chosen persuades someone else to take their place." Oliver stumbled back, his thoughts flashing to the woman who had warned him not to proceed. Someone has to win. Quaker. He wondered if she had already witnessed this grim bargain. The conductor's lips parted in a skeletal grin as he took a step closer. "You may find your salvation if you can persuade another to sacrifice. Otherwise, you might be the next meal." Desperate to escape, Oliver sidestepped the conductor and slammed through the connecting door. The door sealed behind him with a hiss, leaving him in a dim corridor that led to another darkened car. A poisonous thought nudged at him. Should he sacrifice someone else? No, he refused to believe in such a monstrous solution. But logic wrestled with panic. If the train was truly sentient, and if it truly demanded a soul, what would he do? He wandered back into a car filled with subdued strangers. The humming overhead lights felt harsh as he scanned the seats. The woman who had spoken to him earlier was gone. The teens in the corner were still asleep, practically unconscious. A stoic man in a rumpled suit stared blankly at the floor. Oliver clenched and unclenched his fists, guilt swirling in his chest at even thinking about condemning one of these people. He needed time. Maybe if he could find a way to force the doors open. The train lurched to a halt at another unlit station. Oliver rushed to the doorway, prepared to pry open the doors if they did not open automatically. But they slid apart with a sigh, revealing a small, deserted platform illuminated by a single flickering light bulb. His heart leapt. An exit. He could just leave. But as he stepped toward the open door, he felt an invisible wall. A push of air that refused to let him pass. He pressed harder, only for the force to intensify. It was as if gravity itself conspired to keep him inside. Panic mounted in Oliver's chest. He yelled for help, but no one was around. Then the doors snapped closed, and the train rumbled into motion once more. He could barely breathe. The train was making its claim. Was he the chosen one? Thinking of his mundane life, his regrets, and the sense of unfulfilled music that haunted him, Oliver felt tears burn in his eyes. He had dreamed of so much more. Was his soul so burdened that the train found it appetizing? Another flash of the conductor's last words coursed through his mind. You may find your salvation if you can persuade another to sacrifice. Staggering forward, Oliver moved through the cars, searching for that woman who'd warned him. He found her near the rear, trembling in a seat, eyes darting left and right. She seemed relieved he was there. Gripping his hands, she hissed, "We haven't much time. The train stops only a few more times before it demands." She swallowed hard. A new soul. He took the seat across from her. "Have you seen it happen?" he asked quietly. Tears welled in her eyes. "Yes, too many times. I've been stuck here for weeks, maybe longer. Time blurs. People vanish one by one, and the train keeps going. No day, no night. Just stations that lead nowhere." Her voice broke. "I got on after losing my job and my apartment. I made a wish for relief, for a way out of my misery. Next thing I knew, the last train arrived, and I was trapped here." "Then how do we break this?" Oliver asked, voice tight with urgency. Her lip trembled. "You can't leave until the train is fed, and if you try to fight, it'll devour you." She cast her gaze around. "Some try to jump onto the tracks. They wind up lost between worlds, neither dead nor alive." Oliver placed a hand on her shoulder. "What's your name?" "Gina," she whispered. "All right, Gina," he said. "We'll find a way. We won't let it take us or anyone else." His mind spun. Should they sabotage the train? maybe locate the engine and destroy it. But how to do that without spirits or illusions tearing them apart? The overhead speakers crackled to life, and a voice sounding like the conductor's but deeper, resonating with a dark authority, spoke. "Passengers, prepare yourselves. Your time is nearly up. A soul must be offered, or the train will choose." Oliver felt frozen, Gina's hand trembling in his grip. The teenagers woke with startled gasps. The man with the lunch pail leapt to his feet, and the others murmured in panic. A frantic energy coursed through the carriage. The lights dimmed, momentarily plunging them into near darkness, before stuttering back to life. Suddenly, the train door between cars burst open. The skeletal conductor entered, scanning the people. He walked with a predatory slowness. None of the passengers dared meet his gaze. Oliver felt his heart pounding as the conductor's voice rattled. "We meet again, my dear travellers. The moment has arrived. Who among you offers a portion of your soul so the rest may continue on?" The car fell silent. Even the hum of electricity seemed to fade into the background, leaving raw terror in its wake. The conductor's eyes roamed from face to face. Oliver squeezed Gina's hand. If no one volunteered, the train might choose him anyway. He was paralyzed by indecision, not wanting to throw someone else to the wolves, yet desperate to avoid being the victim himself. One of the teenagers, a boy, maybe 16 or 17, suddenly stood. He looked gaunt and hollow-eyed, as if each day of life drained him further. "I'll do it," he said quietly. "I can't do this anymore." His companion, the other teen, grabbed his arm, tears shining in her, but he gently pulled away. "My folks kicked me out," he murmured. "There's nothing for me out there anyway." The conductor's gaze fixed on the teen. Slowly, deathly, he extended a hand. "Come forward, then." Oliver felt a wrench in his gut. It wasn't right. This kid had presumably done nothing wrong, except be lost in a world that offered him few breaks. Oliver bit his tongue. Gina squeezed his hand harder, a silent plea to stay put, but Oliver couldn't. He rose to his feet. "No, this is insane. I'm not letting him do this." The entire car went still. The conductor turned his skeletal face toward Oliver, the lines of his features contorting in displeasure. "Are you offering yourself in his place?" the conductor asked. Oliver froze. He could practically hear his pulse pounding in his ears. Was that what he was doing? Could he do that? His mind raced through memories of the life he'd led. Unfulfilled dreams, a menial job, the saxophone in its dusty case at home. He envisioned all the regrets that had weighed him down, but at least he was older than this kid. Maybe the teen still had a chance if he were free. Oliver swallowed. I'll offer something else. If the train wants darkness, regrets, or heartbreak, let it take mine." The conductor's eyes glowered like embers. "Your regrets do not suffice alone." A cold, swirling wind seemed to fill the car. "The engine demands a fuller feast. A partial offering might buy time, but not freedom." Oliver's throat was dry. "Then let me give more. Take whatever sadness, guilt, or pain I carry, but let the boy go." The teen stared at Oliver with a mix of gratitude and horror. "Don't do this," he whispered. "I volunteered." Gina's eyes brimmed with tears, but she offered no objection. Others in the car watched with fear draped across their faces. The train lights flickered again and the conductor took a step closer. "If you wish to sacrifice your essence, are you prepared to lose what makes you human?" Oliver opened his mouth to reply, only to feel his words stick in his throat. He had no idea what the consequence would be, living as an empty shell, or maybe dying outright. Still, he nodded. He couldn't stand by and watch a kid whose life had barely begun be tossed into the maw of this cursed train. An unearthly glow surrounded the conductor's outstretched hand. Oliver felt a pull on his chest, as though something essential was being tugged from within him. Memories of a lost childhood, the warmth of his mother's smile, the excitement of unwrapping his first saxophone. Flashes of these cherished moments flickered across his mind. He gasped in agony, feeling them slip away one by one. The train vibrated, metal clanging as if fueled by fresh energy. For a heartbeat, Oliver thought he might pass out or die. Then, just as suddenly, the sensation ceased. He dropped to his knees, chest heaving. A hollow ache radiated inside him, as if a part of his very soul had been torn free. He struggled to recall his mother's face, but the image was hazy, incomplete. When he tried to resurrect the memory of his first sax lesson, he felt only dull confusion. The conductor let his hand fall, eyes flickering with grim satisfaction. "The boy's debt is forgiven," he declared. "We proceed to the next station." Oliver coughed, struggling to regain his breath. Gina knelt beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. Her gaze was sympathetic, yet tinged with sorrow. "Thank you," she whispered. "But, are you all right?" He couldn't answer, not fully. He felt half dead, as though everything that made him who he was had been drained. But at least the teen was spared. The overhead lights brightened for a moment, and a mechanical whir indicated the train had resumed its journey. The conductor turned away and walked through the door into the next car, leaving behind a hush, weighed down by dread and relief. As minutes ticked by, Oliver gradually regained his bearings. Emptiness pulsed in his heart, but he was still himself, to some extent. Gina helped him onto a seat. The relieved passengers watched with awe. The teen and his companion sat close, tears silently trickling down their cheeks in gratitude. Oliver could barely muster a nod in their direction. At the next station, this time, the doors slid open to beams of fluorescent light and the bustle of a real platform Oakmont station, back in the city's normal realm. A wave of relief swept through the carriage. Passengers rushed forward, half expecting an invisible barrier again. But this time, there was no pushback. The air was free. They could leave. Oliver struggled to his feet, supported by Gina. One by one, people disembarked, stepping onto the real platform with trembling yet hopeful steps. Outside, the hum of everyday life resonated. Distant announcements, footsteps, the faint echo of a saxophone from a street performer above ground. They were home, or close enough to it. Gina paused at the threshold, turning to Oliver. "Let's go," she said, worries still etched across her face. Oliver nodded, stumbling off the train with her support. He expected relief to wash over him as soon as he stood on the station platform, yet the hollow feeling remained. Memories that used to comfort him were blurred or void. The echo of the train's hunger reverberated in his mind. He realized he no longer cringed at the flickering fluorescent lights or the dull monotony of the commute. Nothing seemed to hold the emotional weight it once had. His sacrifice, it seemed, had cost him the vibrance of the life he'd known. The others from the train scattered, anxious to flee the station. Oliver took a few shaky steps on the concrete floor. Gina stayed by his side, her eyes moist. "You gave up a part of yourself," she whispered sadly. "I'm so sorry." He tried to conjure the joy he used to feel whenever he thought about music, but the feeling wouldn't solidify. Perhaps that was the train's final cruelty, to leave him physically free, yet stripped of the passions that made life worth living. Nevertheless, he had chosen this. Even if he couldn't fully remember why, some quiet voice inside told him he'd done the right thing. Together, Oliver and Gina made their way toward the exit signs. Ahead, the typical bustle of departing passengers was nowhere to be seen. The tunnel leading to the station concourse was eerily deserted, though the lights were comfortingly normal. Behind them, the sentient train idled at the platform. For a brief second, Oliver thought he heard an exhalation from its engine, a satisfied sigh. He paused, turning back as though compelled to look at the monstrous vehicle one last time. Its windows were still tinted black. The exterior gave no hint that it was anything other than a night train running behind schedule. But Oliver sensed the darkness inside, the swirling vortex of regrets, despair, and hopelessness that fueled its journey. He imagined it prowling city tunnels, waiting at lonely platforms for the next desperate soul who might wander aboard. A chill fluttered through him, but the sadness and fear he might have felt were distant, numbed by the emptiness filling him. Gina placed a hand on his arm. "We should go," she whispered, "before it closes its doors." Nodding mechanically, Oliver limped toward the stairs leading above ground. He noticed the teenage boy and his friend huddled near the exit, the boy's shoulders shaking softly as he cried. The friend offered him comforting words. At least they were free now, with a chance to start anew. Oliver felt a small hint of warmth at that realization, like a dim glow in a vast cavern of emptiness. The conductor's warning still haunted him. The engine is never full. One day, the train would call again, or so the rumor went. He silently hoped that none of them would answer that call. Outside, the city lights were bright, the night air crisp. People bustled down sidewalks. Couples left late-night restaurants, and a saxophone's wail drifted from somewhere across the street. Oliver's legs felt uneasy on the concrete after the surreal nightmare in the tunnels. He looked at Gina. In the glow of a distant neon sign, her eyes reflected guilt and gratitude. "Will you be okay?" she asked, voice gentle. "I don't know," he admitted softly. "It feels empty. But I guess that means the train got what it wanted." She squeezed his hand. "I'm sorry. Maybe in time the pieces will come back." He nodded, uncertain. Already his memories seemed like shapes behind frosted glass. He tried to recall the spark of joy he used to feel holding a saxophone, the reassurance from a friend's hug, or the adrenaline rush of discovering a new city block. They flickered just out of reach. Intangible. But he was alive. They were all alive, spared from the final hunger of that cursed train. Gina took a shaky breath. "Then let's find a way to keep living. We can help each other." Oliver managed a tentative smile. "Yes, let's do that." They walked down the street, the saxophone tune weaving through the chilly air. Though he couldn't quite grasp the melody's sweetness, he recognized it as something he used to treasure. Maybe, just maybe, he could learn to love it again someday. Behind them, the station rumbled softly. Oliver and Gina both turned, catching a final glimpse of the train as it pulled away from Oakmont Station, swallowed by the labyrinth of tunnels and shadows. No shrieking brakes or flashing lights heralded its departure, only a quiet, uncanny hiss that rose momentarily and then faded into the hum of the city at night. A devilish predator retreating to its lair, well fed for now, leaving ghosts of regret in its wake. Oliver looked toward the future, guided by the faint reflection of what once mattered. He felt no certainty about what tomorrow might bring, only a stubborn determination not to let that train claim one more inch of his soul. Beside him, Gina seemed to feel the same resolve, her trembling hand gripping his. Though haunted by what had transpired, they took each unsteady step forward, quietly refusing to yield to the darkness that lurked beneath the city streets. Their hearts beat in tenuous unison, forging a fragile hope amid the weight of a sacrifice that had spared them from a far worse fate.